Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new Mattel Jurassic World Survival release. As you can see, we've got ourselves the Charge N Chomp Carnotaurus. So of course, I'm very excited because I love Carnotaurus. I also love the fact that although, a lot of the figures in the Survival line are stylized, the Carnotaurus isn't quite as stylized or strange looking as a lot of the others. I think that's definitely a big plus for this one over some of the other figures. I will say the head looks huge on it. But for the most part, again, it's not super far off from what a Carnotaurus looks like, so that's definitely fun. It's also larger than I was expecting, which is a pleasant surprise. It actually almost has a little bit of a Disney's style Carnotaurus head sculpt kind of to it, which is also quite interesting. But as far as the packaging goes, you can again see Jurassic World Survival, the species name, and all that fun stuff. And then here on the back, an image showing off the Carnotaurus as well as the action feature that it has. And then, of course, the other figures that are coming out soon, which is the Stegosaurus and Gorgosaurus. So let's go ahead, pop this out of the box, and check it out. So here is our Carnotaurus now out of the packaging. And it looks okay, but I can say I'm not a very big fan of the legs of the figure. I think the legs look super awkward. But the head sculpt is pretty decent. You can see it definitely has kind of a Jurassic World look, but at the same time, a little bit of a different look compared to what we usually see with Carnotaurus. Definitely a wider head sculpt than we are used to. I do like the horns on it. I like the fact that the horns kind of stick out to the side and are definitely a bit longer than we usually see. Like when it comes to a mutated version, I guess, of a Carnotaurus, that's kind of a fun aspect to the figure, and the detail in the horns is pretty nice. The paintwork of the face is also okay, as we have this kind of brownish tone. It's almost like a slight reddish brown, but not really. And then you have a black that kind of leads there under the eye and sort of stripes out, as well as a black here running down the snout, and then of course a black for the horns. The eyes are painted with a yellow, and they do have a black pupil, it looks like, which is kind of nice. Kind of like, it almost looks like we have a black pupil and a little bit of a brown. As you lead down, you do have a light tone for the lower jaw. The skin texture on the lower jaw is actually fantastic. Like, the scales look great. There's variation to the sizes and style of scales. You also have a few larger kind of osteoderm-like scales as you move back. We do have an articulated jaw. I think it has to do with the action feature. The inside of the mouth actually looks pretty awesome. The teeth look great. The coloration looks pretty good, as it is kind of like a light off-white bordering on a yellow, and it does have a beautiful gloss coat to it. Same deal for the pinkish tone there with the skin stretching and the tongue. Wow, that's actually some of the best detail I've seen on the inside of the mouth of a Mattel figure yet. Like, well, we lost it. Even on the upper side of the inside of the mouth, it just seems more detailed than we usually see from Mattel. And not just the tongue, like you can actually see detail down there in the gums and everything the entire way back. That's actually really impressive as far as that goes. So really quite happy with that. As we move back, you can see the ridges following along the top of the head. You can also see some osteoderms, of course, classic Carnotaurus osteoderms, as we lead down here into the side of the neck, as well as, again, more standard style skin texture throughout. We also have that brownish tone disappearing as we move down into the body, and then we have more of a darker bluish tone. We do still have more of that light kind of yellowish tone moving down along the underside of the throat, and you can see the throat itself nicely sculpted, as well as some skin wrinkles and stuff leading down. Looks like we've got neck articulation, but again, I'm going to assume that's part of the action feature. Moving back, we still have a little bit more of that kind of like brownish, it's like a reddish brown sort of tone showing up here, starting in the shoulder area and then patterning back, and you can see it actually leads almost out into the tail, which is pretty nice. We have the ridges following along the top, again increasing and decreasing in size as you lead through, as well as, of course, osteoderms throughout, and some pretty darn vibrant skin texture. We can also make out the rib cage down here. We lead down, we've got those nice small Carnotaurus arms, even some pretty impressive skin texture in the arms. Articulation wise, they can go forward and back. Do they come out away from the body? Nope, just forward and back, so not a whole lot when it comes to the articulation of the arms. Pretty smooth transition down to the yellowish tone of the underside, and I am happy to see that yellowish tone lead all the way down here, but of course disappearing as you lead into the groin. There's the Fax app code if you would like to add that one to your collection. But as you lead back, again, the musculature of the leg looks pretty good. You've got some osteoderms as well as some nice looking skin texture throughout, but then as you lead down, the legs begin to look super awkward, like just with the way that the the articulation works and this like big gap right here in the joint of the knee. I think it looks a little bit strange. I have to give Mattel props for trying something different, but I'm not a big fan of the legs. The calf muscle is nicely defined though, so they did do at least a decent job as far as that goes. And then you lead down into the foot sculpt. You can see some nice scoots moving down the front of the foot down into the toes. The claws themselves are very nicely detailed. They have some nice kind of cracks and crevices that my camera doesn't want to focus on, as well as a little bit of a gloss coat to them. And we sort of have dew claws, but they look super strange, very awkward for some reason. And then you move back up out into the tail, and as you lead out, we have no other coloration as far as that yellow on the underside, and that reddish brown disappears as you lead out the rest of the way through the tail. It's just that standard, like, primary dark bluish tone. You do have all sorts of ridges and osteoderms and stuff, and you actually have ridges moving along the underside of the tail of the Carnotaurus as well. We can swivel this area at least, and then there is an action feature button right there. When you look at it from the back, you can kind of see the little bit of curvature there to the tail. And then looking at it again from over here, it looks pretty decent. The head is massive on the figure though, which I think really does not benefit the Carnotaurus at all. I think the head is just, you know, significantly too large. I get that it's kind of mutated, but it still looks very awkward. And then of course the legs are just beyond strange on the figure. It's not the end of the world, but I personally don't like the legs. And honestly, when it comes to the Mattel Carnotaurus figures, I actually think this might be the worst one that we've had so far, because it just looks so strange, and none of the other ones have had that sort of awkwardness to them like this one has. It's not a horrible figure, but when it comes to the Mattel Carnotaurus figures, it is probably one of the worst. And you can also see that there is, of course, articulation in the hips, as well as the knees, and then down here in the ankles, and then a little bit more, but I think all of that has to do with the action features. So we're going to go ahead and pull this back just a little bit, try to get a look at the action feature. So, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, it did have some fun noises. I like the chomping action feature, and I like that it chomped down, so it looked like it was, you know, kind of running, obviously, which it's supposed to be doing, but also kind of like hunting something down below, and that's kind of the point of it running. So I do sort of like that, but I think the movement of the legs just looks super awkward, doesn't look smooth or natural. Again, focus camera, geez. I can appreciate Mattel kind of thinking outside the box and trying to come up with something different and new. You know, with the amount of figures they've released, it's probably pretty hard to still find new action features and stuff to give to them. I also don't like how, you know, depending on where you have the legs, like here it's a little bit better on that side, but right now, because of the positioning of the leg, there's a massive gap right here when it comes to like the thigh leading up to the hip, and that as well looks super awkward. And even the figure in general, like when you try to balance it out and position it, like that's actually not too terrible right there, but some of, like when I first pulled it out and I set it down, like the legs spread really far apart and it just looked super awkward. Like it did not look good at all. So when it comes to like a display aspect, it's not all that great. You can kind of change the position, I think, maybe. I'm trying to see if I can position it with, oh, so there's the mouth open a little bit. I'm trying to see if I can position it in a way where the mouth is open. See, I would love to be able to display it like that. But now look how far apart the legs are. It just looks ridiculous. And if you put the legs close like this together, oh, they just spread further apart. See, again, it just looks so awkward with that stance. I mean, I guess it kind of makes it look like the Carnotaurus is running, so it's not terrible, but it's still pretty awkward looking. I don't even know how I feel about it, to be honest. But for a size on the Carnotaurus, I guess we'll just move on. For a size, for a length from the snout to the tail, about 16 3/4 inches, heading towards 17 inches, or about 43 centimeters. And then for a height, in the position it's in, because it could get a little bit higher, it is super slouched right now, to the top of the horn, actually to the top of those ridges a little bit under, just a hair under 6.5 inches or 16.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day human being next to our Carnotaurus. And you can see again, it does have a pretty good size to it. It's definitely a bit larger than many of the other Mattel Carnotaurus that we've seen in the past. Although this is a repainted version, here is the very first Carnotaurus that came out from Mattel for the Fallen Kingdom line, and as you can see, that Carnotaurus was a good bit smaller than the newer version. Here is the next size up from the original release of the Carnotaurus from Mattel, which you can see is definitely a good bit closer, but still a little bit smaller. We've also got the real feel Carnotaurus, which you can see as well is kind of close to the same size, but I would still say a little bit smaller. And then again, another repainted figure, but here is the Hammond Collection Carnotaurus next to the newer version, and again you can see pretty similar in size. I don't know who I would give the advantage to here. I would say maybe they are in like pretty much the same size range, with the newer version just having a little bit more body mass. So ultimately, I would say the only one that I can think of off the top of my head that is definitively larger would be the Super Colossal version. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Survival Charge N Chomp Carnotaurus is definitely a mixed bag. I kind of like the design. I like that it is definitely a little bit stylized, a little bit different, but not super far off from what a Carnotaurus looks like. So they did a good job of kind of keeping it in the realm of possibility of a Carnotaurus while giving it a bit of a different look, but at the same time kind of the Jurassic World look. So, you know, overall I think the design looks really good. The fine detail also looks really good on the figure. Sculpt-wise, it's pretty nicely done, with only a few complaints like the head being a bit too large for the body itself, and then the awkwardness of the legs. But the awkwardness of the legs is due to the action feature. I like the colors of the Carnotaurus as well. I think they did a pretty good job on that. It's not anything amazing that really pulls you in or, you know, makes you look at it and say, wow, that's the coolest color scheme I've seen, but it's not bad either. It looks okay. It's the action feature as far as this one goes that's the biggest problem for me. The awkwardness of the legs is definitely a little bit of an eyesore, and I don't think it looks all that great. It's a pretty interesting idea, and I can appreciate Mattel trying something a little bit different, so again, kudos to them for that, but it's definitely not something that I am a huge fan of. I like the jaw snapping, just the legs running and the fact that it's hard to kind of display is the, issues that I'm not a big fan of, but I could definitely see kids liking it, so it is what it is. But if you are interested in this, I will include a link in the description to where you can purchase it on Amazon.com, so check that link, pick it up if you want it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.